before school went back into session over the summer. We talked to both Benjamin and Isabel, and now we've also got a couple others joining us, Colby and Sophia. So Benjamin is a senior from Bedford County Schools, and he goes to Jefferson Forest High School, right? I'm gonna wave to them. I don't know if you can see or speak, and then they'll know you're. Hey, there you are.
Yes.
And then we have Isabel, who is a junior at Monticello High School in Albemarle County. If you can say hello.
Hi.
There you go.
Hello.
Sorry. And then Sophia is also from Albemarle County, but she goes to Albemarle High School in the same district. So if you can say hello, there you go. And then Colby is a junior at Woodgrove High School in Loudoun County.
Hello.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today to talk about some of this stuff. I think we just kind of wanted to get feedback from you guys now that you're really back in school, whatever that looks like to you, and just kind of wanted to get a feel for where things are. So I thought maybe I would just ask you some of those questions. I sent you guys some ideas just to have thought starters, but really it's kind of open game. You just tell us what you want to tell us, some information that you think would be pertinent for all of us to hear. Just so you know, most of the people on the call are architects and designers and facilities people and administrators and educators. And so you've got a healthy mix of resources that are on here that want to hear from you and hear what you guys are experiencing. So I kind of wanted to ask what back to school has been looking like for you. I know that before in the summer, there were all kinds of ideas being thrown around as to what was going to happen, but now it's actually happening. So maybe I'll start with Ben, because you're on my upper left here. If you could share with me what Bedford County Schools is doing. And I noticed actually this morning on the news that they talked about closing a couple schools because of some outbreaks. So
yes,
go.
And I can talk about that too, but at least from the high school perspective where I go to school, we are doing a 3-class, 1 semester classes. So we're doing 3 classes in the first semester, 3 classes in the second semester, which is different for how it's been for us in the past. And as far as going in person, we have an A day and a B day group with A day students going on Mondays and Thursdays and B day students going on Tuesdays and Fridays. And then every other Wednesday is an opportunity for either A or B kids, A kids, one Wednesday, B kids the next, A kids the next. So for them to get remedial help if they need it and more one-on-one time with their teachers, which I think is a really cool opportunity. Recently, I think as of yesterday, they announced the temporary closure of one of the middle schools in our district due to, I think, cases or exposures or something along those lines, and they are moving entirely virtual. But besides that, the rest of the county is getting in-person opportunities, which I think has been really great so far.
Good. And that's been consistent the whole way through. You've not had to make it, other than what you're mentioning for the middle school, they've really not had to do anything like that.
We had some issues, I think, at one point with classes being overcrowded and having more rules about spreading out and keeping a maximum number of kids or having a maximum number of kids in a room. But besides that, there have been no other issues that I know of.
Okay, cool. All right, Isabel, how about yours?
Yeah, so in Albemarle County, from day one of the school year, we've been all virtual. We're doing a block or a 4x4, I think. So we have 4 classes in the fall semester and 4 different classes in the upcoming spring semester. And just recently, a couple weeks ago, our school board voted to advance to, I believe it's the 3rd phase of their proposed 5-phase program for reopening. So with that, I believe it's pre-K through 3rd grade is going to have the opportunity to go back hybrid, I believe, 2nd quarter. So starting maybe next week, I think, is the start of the new quarter. So, that's really exciting for the younger students as they're able to, get tangible learning and, those in-person connections. As far as older kids, we're not sure what it'll look like. Fingers crossed that we're able to move forward in the next phases, but we'll just have to see. It, of course, depends on cases. So yeah, and it's been consistent throughout. So we started virtual and have been all virtual for since we started.
Gotcha. So Sophia, she kind of answered a bit of that for you related to Albemarle County, what the normal process is. So I might switch to Colby and then come back to you. That's cool. How is it in Loudoun County, Colby?
Yeah, so we were originally planning on doing optional for students on like a student could choose hybrid or they could choose doing all online. And I think within 3 weeks of the school year starting, they switched it to all online. So we've been consistently all online so far. They're going to reevaluate it in January, I think.
Okay.
So will either switch to all in school, hybrid, or all online still. But that's up to the school board. We don't really have any say in that.
Sure.
But as of right now, we have Mondays off. They give us Monday assignments to work on. And then Tuesday and Wednesday, we have our A day, which is 4 classes. And then Thursday and Friday, we have our B day, which is 4 more classes. And I think starting next week, we're actually switching back to ABAB on those 4 days instead of AABB. The students have been complaining a lot about like workload and having those back-to-back classes kind of is like hard to get your work done in one day. So they're switching back to AB to see how that goes. But other than that, we've been pretty consistent.
Why do you
No one's
think
really.
they did the A to AA and BB? Why do you think they did that initially?
Um, Honestly, I'm not really sure. I think it was just kind of an adaptation to the online learning. They thought it would be better. I think maybe it had something to do with the original hybrid idea, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, that's what I was
That
wondering.
ended up being canceled, so I mean, it didn't really affect us.
Right.
But I guess we'll just have to wait till January to see what they do.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Sophia, I'll go with you first since we didn't get to ask you that part. So in light of what the schools are doing and in your particular county, as Isabel discussed, has been all remote for the upper grades especially, and then you're changing to this phase 3. Do you, how has it been for you as far as workload and application? And do you find it better? Do you find some good things that have come from that? What are your thoughts?
Sure. Yeah. So, like Izzy said, Albemarle County is completely virtual. Apart from, I know there is a small portion of kids who go to the school to access internet. Um, but apart from that, we're completely virtual and our classes are all on Zoom. And because of COVID and because of the fact that some kids can't access internet all the time and they have to work from home, things like that, um, our school county has made it so that there's no late work this year, or work can't be like deadlines can't be enforced or punished, basically. So that's been different, but I think that definitely on online learning, you have to self-pace, and there's a lot of self-discipline required. And another thing is that with online learning, you have to sort of take initiative to form connections with your teachers because you're not going to get that in-person relationship formed as easily. But yeah.
That makes sense. How about collaboration with your peers? Are there opportunities for projects or things like that where you're actually doing sidebar Zoom meetings or groups to create?
Yeah, so a lot of our teachers utilize like breakout rooms
Mhm,
to put us into groups for discussions or for projects.
mhm.
And I think it's easier in junior year because you already sort of know the people in your grade. So it's easier to come into contact with them if you have a group project or something like that.
That makes sense. I had one middle schooler make a comment about how they actually really like doing the Zoom classes and being remote in this way because of the fact that it kind of takes away some of the popularity contests that are out there in the world. That it kind of keeps people on a little bit of a level playing field. And I'm obviously, as you get more into your grade levels, some of that hopefully is dissipated. But you can imagine the first year middle schooler what that might look like. So I thought that was an interesting comment. So we talked about. Let me see some of these questions again. Okay. So what good things do you see coming out of this? And what things do you think, we could learn from what we're doing right now? Are there any ideas that you've sort of thought of or I know I'm actually going to not pick on, but ask Colby to share a little bit of some of the work that he's done in his area. He's had an opportunity to do some philanthropic work and get the community involved. So would you like to share a little bit about what that looks like? And
Yeah, absolutely. So When we made the decision to switch to all online, I realized certain kids in need wouldn't have the opportunity to have like their designated workspace. And I remember last year when we got out early in March, I tried working from the kitchen table in the dining room and it just wasn't working. It was hard to focus. So I knew that like having a desk would be kind of crucial to children who are doing online learning. So I started a nonprofit called Desks for Distance. To this date, I've built 120 desks and donated them to kids in need for distance learning. It's really eye-opening, and I'm really glad I did it because Loudoun County, we live in a wealthy county, and I'm very fortunate to live there. But it's easy to overlook the amount of like need, and it's just been really eye-opening, and it's been a great experience for me.
That's cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. That's something that's very good that's come from this and you got a lot of the community to kind of get involved in it
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. We had 2 build days. There's a place called Makersmith, which is basically just a giant warehouse with all metal woodworking tools. We built 20 desks with a build day there. I partnered with a home building / remodeling company, and we built 50 desks in one day. So that was pretty cool. And then they partnered with a moving company to help distribute them to schools and families. So that went really well.
Yeah, it's very cool. I think if anybody that's listening is interested in doing something like that, you've got sort of a how-to
Yeah.
concept. You
So
can get them in contact with you if they're interested in learning more about how to do
yeah,
something.
I have a Facebook group called Desk for Distance Outreach, which basically I made a PDF, just everything you need to get started. I also made a YouTube video on my desk design, but people can use whatever design they want. I think I've had 8 other people start it up in other states around the country. So that's been really good to kind of see it expand around.
That's cool. Very
Yeah,
cool. I told
thank
him I
you.
was going to pick on him a little bit. I was like, I hope you don't mind me asking those questions. um, so Ben, what have been some things that have happened that you think are really good that have come from this experience that you think we should maybe, utilize into the future?
I think that out of all of this, there's an interesting change from how quickly we went from, at least where I am, 1 hour each class every day, 5 days a week. And that's the perfect amount of time that you have to learn all of the material. And I think that this can really put a different view on that to say, we don't need that much time, or hey, maybe we need a little bit more time than that. Let's redistribute that. Because you're online, you spend this much time doing this and you spend as much time as you need, so that we're not locked into something that feels like we're just doing it for the sake of the system, but we're doing it because we feel like that's what we need. And I think that if there's so much more that we can pull out of this instead of just finally waiting until we can go back to normal. But I really think that there's, I hate this phrase, a new normal that we can pull out of it to create something better than what we've had before, to make a better educational experience for literally everybody. And I think that would be awesome if we can look past just trying to get back to what we had before.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Izzy, I heard Sophia call you that, so I'm going to call you that now. Is that okay? So
Yes,
do
ma'am.
you have any thoughts in that regard?
Yeah, so well, first of all, Colby, that's incredible what you're doing. So props to you for that. That's
you.
a really neat project. And I kind of agree with what Benjamin said. I think that, we've never had the majority or almost all of school systems doing virtual learning as the normal. And I think in the future, going through this experience, which is so abnormal, could lead to, like you said, a new normal where students, if virtual learning works better for them, I feel like we know how to do it at now, that could be an option for students if it works better for them. And yeah, or also opportunities to maybe collaborate with other schools or programs virtually, because again, we kind of know how to do it. So I think that could lead to some cool opportunity and just more choice for students.
Perfect. Very well said. And Sophia, you have any thoughts along those lines?
Yeah, I think that a good amount of time in school, a lot of us as students, when we go to class, we're thinking, oh, like, why are we just sitting here all the time? Because sometimes during school, there's that kind of gray area where we're transitioning, like the teacher's handing out papers, like things like that. And there's like minuscule amounts of time where I don't want to say we're not receiving active instruction, I guess. And now it's all compacted because of virtual learning. And I feel like that teachers could really be learning a lot about how students receive like compact instruction like that, and if they absorb it well enough.
And probably recognizing all the various learning styles that each person has, and their pace is different from one to another. And so that's going to change that dynamic quite a bit. I agree with you. So there's a couple other things we talked about. I don't know if any of you are, I think last time we spoke, Izzy talked about being in soccer, and I know Colby plays. I'm not sure as far as sports and extracurricular activities. How has that looked, or what do you see that looking like if it hasn't already started? Because I think I remember several schools are not actually starting that until like January, February timeframes. So maybe Colby, I'll start with you.
Yeah, before I start on that, someone just wrote a comment in the chat, so I'll touch on that really fast as well. Where I live right now in Western Loudoun, we don't have fiber optic cables, even though we're really close to DC. So the internet is not like remotely good where we live. So I know a lot of my peers have like struggles with connectivity issues. The other hardest thing for learning virtually, I don't remember who touched on it, but definitely staying focused and disciplined in your studies. It's a lot more on you online than it is in person. I know like the first couple of weeks I got really behind because I wasn't prepared for like the workload and the amount of focus it requires. So that's probably the hardest thing I would say. Going back to your question about sports and activities, thankfully travel baseball is still going on. We've been pretty good about social distancing and we've never had an outbreak. So my baseball team is still going on. School-wise sports, I don't think we're going to have anything this year, to be completely honest. They're not sure what's happening. I think winter track is running right now. I do that in the winter to get in shape for baseball in the spring. So that's starting soon. Hopefully that'll last. Baseball in the spring is just an unanswered question. We're not entirely sure what's going to happen there yet, but hopefully we'll be able to play.
Very good. Izzy, I think.
Sure, yeah. I'll answer the question in the chat as well for me. So I agree with what Colby said about the self-discipline. I have found it really hard to utilize time if we get out of Zoom early or something, time in between my classes to complete the assignments or get other work done, which has been difficult. I have gotten behind, and I am honestly still kind of figuring out what works best for me in regards to organization and pacing, and trying to get work done in between classes or using that time as a brain break, because I mean, as we all know, it's really hard to stare at a computer all day. So for me, it's probably just figuring out when getting my work done works best for me. With extracurriculars, so moving into phase 3, I believe that there was an advance in extracurriculars, but I'm not entirely sure. Sophia, you might know what that means for Albemarle County. I think that there was a chance that practices could occur. Again, I'm not too sure, but fingers crossed for spring sports to be on. But of course, it just has everything to do with cases. And then, so I swim, and my club team has been able to practice. We've kind of gotten it down. We figured it out. So we're able to practice 6 days a week, which is great. But with school, it's not too certain yet.
Yeah. Sophia and Benjamin, Sophia, we'll go.
Yeah, I'll talk about, I guess, what's been hardest about online school first. I think that definitely self-discipline, because I think teachers bring, like having a teacher always hold you accountable is really important. And now that aspect of accountability is sort of gone because, like I said before, we don't have punishments for like missed deadlines. So it's hard to hold yourself accountable without the teacher enforcing any academic punishment on you if you turn something in late. So it's really hard to fall behind. And then another added aspect is sometimes I feel like it's harder to understand the material without a teacher like looking over your shoulder during class, checking up on you, saying, "Oh, how are you doing that?" Things like that. Those little interactions with a teacher, like, "How do I do this?" that maybe are a little bit intimidating to ask over Zoom. So you don't really want to bother the teacher or interrupt the whole class to ask. But so I think that understanding the material is a little bit more difficult when you don't have in-person learning.
That makes sense.
And yeah, and with sports, I've been fortunate enough to have my club team practice consistently outside of school. But I think with our county's school sports for winter and spring, they're still sort of hanging in the balance. I'm not sure yet.
And Ben?
Okay, I'll try and put a bow on all that because you guys have said some really great stuff. But from my perspective, I think along with what Sophia was saying, it has definitely hurt communication with teachers that I've had the privilege of having in the past, to have teachers where like you feel like this is somebody they get along with, like this person's like almost my friend. Like I don't feel like I can say that as well this year as I have in the past, just because of less interaction. And I don't know if that's actually affecting how much I'm learning, but it's definitely affecting my school experience, I would say. And as far as sports, I know that there are a lot of club teams and I think some school teams that are practicing using school facilities occasionally, but we have had no real start of teams playing officially, because I think that was the VHSL that like pushed stuff back, but different club teams for various sports are.
Gotcha. So I was going to ask also, how are you connecting with your peers? Obviously through these club sports and things of that nature, and those breakout rooms that you mentioned, Sophia, before, when the teacher's, doing the Zoom presentation and lesson, you're having those opportunities to connect. But how are you, is that working? And are there other ways that you're connecting with your peers? And you can kind of just, if you all want to just chime in, whatever seems to, whoever wants to talk about that part.
Yeah, so I'll take that one first, if that's okay. We use Google Meet, and we do have breakout rooms as well as a feature. The problem is with our school system, they don't require cameras to be on. I think one of the reasons is, like I mentioned before, we don't have the best internet, and I think the camera can definitely slow it down and lag it. So they don't require that. I found in a lot of my classes, many people don't have theirs on at all, especially in the breakout rooms. Even if we go into breakout rooms, people won't turn their cameras on, and it's not the same. It's definitely harder to connect to people, especially if you don't know them. I know you said or someone said it, it's our junior year, we're more familiar with people, but it's still very challenging to kind of connect to people through that aspect.
Yeah, makes sense.
I'm happy to go next. So one thing that my peers have really utilized are just group chats, whether it be iMessages or like social media. I have a group chat for all of my classes, and a good majority of the people are in the group chat. So if we're confused with something, whether it's during the Zoom or outside of class, we're able to ask, and then more times than not, people know the answers. So that's been nice. And sometimes, we're just able to chat, which, you get that connection. And then we use breakout rooms, and like Colby said, sometimes it's really hard to connect, especially if people don't have their cameras on. But even then, it's hard to tell if people are engaged, if it's like a discussion-based class, and people aren't engaged in the discussion. You're kind of sitting there it's hard to get something out of it. So breakout rooms and then group chats are kind of, how we're getting the connection.
Do you think some of this will impact the physical space that we go back to when we do go back in a more normal way, I guess, hybrid or full on? Do you think that some of the spaces in the overall building, because again, we're talking to a lot of architects, designers, and people that work on educational spaces. Do you think that this experience, being more flexible and being more agile in your learning process and your learning styles, do you think that that might give you some more opportunities to have those like breakouts, and this student needs a little more attention, and this one really is ready to fly into the next section or can move on? Do you think that that some of those physical spaces might be impacted? Or have you, I didn't ask that question of you guys ahead of time. I just was thinking of that as we were talking.
So with the kind of communication aspect missing, and the personal connections, I think it'd be nice to have kind of a general space, almost like a courtyard, to do more in-person connections, as well as, like you said, smaller breakout rooms. Well, in real life, we just have smaller groups break up. Before I moved here, I lived in Cincinnati. In our middle school, we had a remodel, and they had this really cool thing. The building was a square, and there were hallways on each end, and on each corner of the hallway, there was an open aired room and there was a bunch of furniture, and teachers would send out small groups, and you could go sit at a table that had like a whiteboard on it. You could go sit in chairs that had little tables. It was just kind of a cool space to get out of the classroom and discussion. I think that would be a really cool aspect to be added to schools, because I haven't seen that anywhere else other than that school I had before.
We need to talk
And
to
I
Mike.
was
No, go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
okay. Thinking along the same lines as Colby, I think that one thing, if I had to point at something that I prefer about Zoom versus in class as far as like efficiency and learning, is how quickly we can move from breakout rooms to in class time. So, can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Mhm,
Okay.
yes.
All right. So I think that an open concept space, which I know is becoming more and more popular now that I've seen in new places, where it's easy to flip between group discussion from back to class teaching kind of thing, is something that's really valuable that I've had more opportunity to do now that we're virtual than I ever did when we were in person, trying for the teachers trying to give us opportunity to talk to each other.
Makes sense. Sophia, we didn't ask you before on both things. Any
Oh, no,
thoughts?
that's fine. I think that on Zoom, like someone said before, a lot of people have black screens on Zoom, but whenever my teachers put me in breakout rooms, usually like all the black screens, like the cameras will flip on because I think people just feel more comfortable in a small group. And sometimes the best ideas and the best learning that I've had so far takes place during breakout rooms, even without the teacher there, because I think maybe some people are like uncomfortable saying the wrong answer in front of the teacher or in front of the whole class. And I think physically in a school, like when group projects happen and things like that, I think it's important to have like small spaces where students can work independent from a teacher for a while, so that they're not under their constant supervision. But yeah.
Perfect. 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 Yes, Ben.
I'd just like to add one more thing. One thing that I like about breakout rooms is that this is going to sound like bad, but I mean it in the best possible way. I like it that when you're talking, the teacher cannot hear you. Because I feel like when you're in class, you have to like kind of whisper. And like Sophia was talking about, you're like, you don't want them to hear you say something stupid, you know, like you got to be careful what you're saying. But you're just like in a group of like 4 kids and you guys are trying to figure out what's going on. And you're like, man, do you know what's going on? And you can be like more emphatic about it and more real, I feel like, than having the teacher loom over you. So I don't know, if an architect built like a glass soundproof box for the teacher in the corner while we're like working in groups, that might
Right.
be all right.
That's cool. Perfect. Perfect. Well, we got a little bit of a late start, but I want to be respectful of your time and of the people that are watching. And I think we got some great content, and I really appreciate you guys sharing your thoughts and your experiences. And you know, we might reach back out as we get a little bit closer to the end of the school year and see what we're thinking. We've really enjoyed all of these sessions and discussions. The one other thing that I wanted to note to those that are watching as well is that on our A4LE Virginia chapter website, there is an opportunity to give back. We're trying to start that initiative and have people participate in that for those that are experiencing homelessness, even that don't have desks, as you know, Colby and his group have worked on building some of those desks, but they don't have desks and they don't have materials, they don't have other things. They need both financial and personal support during that, because as all these other homes that are working through online learning from home, they're doing online learning from wherever that home is for them at a given time. So on that, there's some links for you to be able to donate time, energy, etc. So I'd love to see our membership and people go out and work towards that goal. So thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a great rest of the year. Thanks for being on the call. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.